Recording, the Zoom meeting is up now, so we'll begin. Welcome to the Birmingham City Commission joint meeting with the Planning Board on September 29th, 2025, here in the Department of Public Works at 7:32 p.m. Would you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Long.
Here.
Mayor Proton Ballard.
Here.
Commissioner Emine.
Here.
Commissioner Haig.
Here.
Commissioner Host.
Here.
Commissioner Long.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer. Absent. Scott Klein.
Present.
Brian Williams.
Present.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce.
Here.
Robin Boyle.
Here.
Stuart Jeffries. Bert Kosek. Daniel Scher.
Here.
Nassim Ramin. Duncan Curie.
Here.
Carter Anderson.
Here.
Olivia Ventanos. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we now open the meeting to public comment. If there's anyone in the room or online who'd like to make a public comment limited to about 3 minutes for an item that is not on tonight's joint meeting agenda. I see none in the room and I see none online, so we will move to the discussion topic for tonight, which is the zoning ordinance update. Leah? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Long. My name is Leah Blazinski. For those of you I haven't met yet, I am a city planner here at the city of Birmingham, and it's very nice to be here with you all today. So this is the second of 2 joint commission planning board meetings that our ordinance requires to have per year. The subject of tonight's meeting is the zoning ordinance update scope of work. Thank you again to the City Commission for funding this project through the budget this year. At the last joint meeting in June, Nick provided a detailed overview of what the zoning ordinance update is, what we can expect as we move forward with this project, and you all had a great discussion. So as it relates to policy, the zoning ordinance update is really getting the full force of our attention in the planning division and at the planning board, in addition, of course, to the regular day-to-day of site plan review and applications. So since we don't have another policy topic underway at the moment, we thought this meeting would be a good opportunity for the City Commission and the Planning Board to touch base specifically on the scope of work portion of the RFP for the zoning ordinance update project. So we opened the RFP on September 2nd, 2025, and it will close tomorrow, September 30th at 3 p.m. So I'm going to just give you a brief overview of the scope of work in a presentation and then turn it back over to you all to have another great discussion. And so here we sort of have it subdivided into seven steps, and we'll just review each step briefly with one slide per step. And this is just an overview for you all. Of course, we'll be getting hiring a consultant once the RFP closes to lead this process. So the first step, as we call it, to start off the project, city staff will be meeting with the consultant team to refine the project scope, confirm expectations, finalize a public engagement strategy, and this is when we as city staff can make sure that the consultant team has access to and understands all the plans, policy documents, and codes that they will need to be reviewing as a part of the project. And we'll also outline, in our experience, some key deficiencies or outdated provisions that we know of in the current ordinance. So the second step is public engagement and stakeholder involvement. The consultant will, with staff's assistance, develop and implement a robust public engagement strategy to provide transparency and as well as educate the community as we go along on the zoning ordinance update. This will include, but is of course not limited to, a series of public meetings, workshops, focus groups, or open houses throughout the process. They'll also be engaging with elected officials, you all, the planning board, and other relevant boards and committees to get some more input and build towards a consensus. So, diagnostic report. This is one step that I consider a really keystone step in the whole entire process, will be the delivery of a diagnostic report. So this is where the contracted team is going to just line by line take a fine-tooth comb through our current zoning ordinance and produce a report identifying major issues as they see it, where they'll start to recommend approaches that we could take to address them. This is where they also, in this report, could include some best practices to start to inform us of what's going on, nationwide and in similar cities, and where they can highlight some legal considerations as well as emerging trends in zoning and land use planning for us to start to study and consider. They'll present these findings to staff, stakeholders, planning board, and the city commission for feedback and refinement. Step 4 is where they start to draft the zoning ordinance. And so here they would prepare a complete rewrite or a major revision of the zoning ordinance based on community input and staff guidance. So here I want to emphasize the major revision portion of this line. A bit of planner speak in here to call it a complete rewrite. Of course, we'll be producing a new document, but we're not, this is not throwing out the entire zoning ordinance and putting high-rises everywhere in the city. The base of the new zoning ordinance is always going to be the current zoning that we have with tweaks as it makes sense based on the diagnostic report. So we do expect a new document. Formatting is up in the air, organization is up in the air, so meaning it could look very different from the forms of the document we have today, but we're not just starting from scratch. So I hope that's clear. And so of course we expect the team to ensure that the ordinance is consistent with state and federal laws, supports the 2040 plan, and includes clear enforceable standards. And then number 5, zoning map revisions. Of course, the zoning ordinance and the zoning map go hand in hand. They both form the legal basis for all of our, decisions and site plan review at the planning board. And so we'll be expecting the consultant to review and update our official zoning map to reflect any new zoning districts or changes to the existing district boundaries. Again, just to clarify, it's not rezoning every property in the city. A lot of properties may see no change at all. But there's, been discussion along the way of how we may find that we can condense a couple residential zones into one. Therefore, if we do that in the zoning ordinance update, then we need to change the map to reflect that. And we would expect the consultant to also help us with best practices with the map. If you've been on our map currently, it may or may not be the best form of online map that we can provide to the public. And so we hope that the consultant can help us implement best practices with things like color schemes, as well as providing a high quality, graphically superior and usable zoning map. So number 6, this is just getting into the administrative and procedural side of things, sort of what we do every day in the planning division and with the planning board. They would be reviewing and updating our zoning procedures, including our application processes, our permitting processes, and our timelines for accomplishing that, and help propose changes to us for clarity and efficiency and transparency for those processes. And then also to ensure alignment with other local development review processes. And the last step is to provide a complete final draft of the zoning ordinance update the zoning ordinance, the zoning map, and then prepare summaries and presentations, and help us along the way through adoption. So attending the public meetings, helping answer public comment, and then refining as necessary if we do find anything through the adoption process that needs to be revised. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. There was a couple of questions for your consideration that were in the memo in the packet. I just brought them over to the slide here so we can have it up while we're discussing, and I can turn it back over to you, Manuel.
Thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to Planning Board Chair Klein to see if he'd like to add any comments, context, thoughts about undertaking this process.
Thank you, Mayor Long. I don't have much to say, which is probably a shock to all of you. But I will say that I think staff did an excellent job pulling this together. I'm extremely happy with the RFP as has been published. So great job to staff, and Leah, your presentation tonight was great. I think you outlined all of the important points, and I guess I'm just going to turn it back to you and allow you to provide any input you may have.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Williams, or Chair Williams.
I think it's important to note how in many of these subsections, it's important that we recognize public engagement is critical throughout the whole process. So I think those who are watching on TV understand that there'll be plenty of opportunities for the public to participate in this process. I think that's consistent with how Birmingham has operated in the past. We expect to continue that in the future. The one caveat I would have is, and I could be wrong on this, but when the Triangle Plan was adopted before 2010, I don't remember the exact year. I think Robin and I were the only ones.
2007, I think it was.
Just on the, I think it's critical when we get to the point past item 7 on the board that there be a little more interaction between the planning board and the commission in terms of adoption of the final zoning. Because I don't think the planning board participated substantially after the public hearings and the draft was prepared and went to city commission. So I would hope that we'll have a little more interaction towards the end of the process. But I think the most important thing for me and for the public is the extensive engagement that we expect the public to have.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I wanted to say, Leah, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the context, because as you say, planning speak can unnecessarily give people concern when it says things like major overhaul or major update. I appreciate that you clarified that we are not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, that we are not starting from zero, that the basis of the new document will be the existing document and zonings, and what we're trying to do is incorporate some of the aspirational goals from the 2040 plan and clean up the inconsistencies that you have all identified over time. But I don't want members of the public to be fearful that somehow the zoning of their property or their neighbors is going to change without input and or against anybody's will. We don't need people to be concerned about their quality of life and their investment in this community. So I appreciate that. I'll ask, do any other planning board members want to add comments? Mr. Scher.
So I guess I would encourage staff in outreach to the community and as part of whatever presentations the consultant makes to the public to put into context what a zoning ordinance does. And what I've observed over the years is when we get to site plans, there are occasions when a neighbor or a member of the public comes and says, I object to that site plan. I don't think X, Y, or Z should happen in this neighborhood, but it's something that's permitted by the zoning ordinance. And I don't think everybody in the public understands that when a site plan application comes before the planning board, if it meets all the requirements of the zoning ordinance, we have to approve it. We can't just say, we'd rather not do that. So that the folks understand how the zoning ordinance interacts with site plans and approvals for particular properties, and that this is their opportunity to think about and to have input on the broader context of what the community and the various zoning categories will look like and contain that will apply to the future.
I was gonna say, any other planning board members? Ms. Boyce or Mr. Boyle? Nope, nope. All right, then Commissioner Host.
Well, I was just going to ask, it would be nice to hear from all the planning board members as to how they feel these site plans and reality of what people bring forward, you know, what changes they might like to see. I assume it's in the 2040 plan, but I'd like to hear it from the planning board, who's the front line of the site plans.
I'll add something.
Certainly, Ms. Boyce.
I think when we start our public engagement, probably the first and most important step would be the most boiled down, simplest explanation about how it works. Because I don't think that most of the public even know the questions to ask, because they don't typically read this stuff. And we see it all the time. You know, when there's a development that comes by right in an area that's adjacent to, say, a residential development, and the residents come out and they're very upset. But the reality is if they knew to even ask the question, or if their realtor maybe helped them to identify that the property directly adjacent to them permits a 4-story building, you know, they may have made a different decision, but they don't know the questions to ask. They don't understand the language. So I think the first most important thing is to give the most simple explanation about how these things work, because we can't just jump right into it with the public and expect that they'll have an understanding of what we're working on. So I hope that lends to what you're asking, but
Yeah, I'd just like to know what the questions are,
from the,
what you think.
yeah, from the public,
Yeah.
I don't think they know the questions to ask, because I think that the questions, because it's over their head. It's not something that they typically work with or understand, most of them in their daily lives or their jobs. So the simplest explanation about the ordinance and about what, as basic as you know, what is a zone? What's R1 mean? I bet a lot of people don't have a clue that they're in an R1 or an R2 or an R3. What is that? What does that mean? How do I read this? You know, what is lot coverage? What are setbacks? People don't know the terminology. So I think we can help them with that, and that will hopefully, you know, lead to a better dialogue and their understanding of what this stuff looks like. So.
Well,
Mr. Boyle.
let me approach Brad's comment in a slightly different way. It's a cliche, but it's true. A zoning ordinance is a living document. If a zoning ordinance is dead, then it's not doing its job. It needs to adapt and change according to the context and the economy and the place that we're living in, which is a good thing. But over 20 years, 25 years, it can become messy. It can become layered. So bringing in consultants, bringing in another set of eyeballs, I think gives us an opportunity to learn from them about how our ordinance works or doesn't work. And a simple example would be the fact that we've got an abundance of overlays,
Right.
where we're never very sure under what part of the ordinance, what date of the ordinance, what goals of that particular overlay relate to that piece of property today. So I think bringing in, we hope, a really good choice of consultants will give us that opportunity to stand back and listen to them, listen to your consultants who are saying, in order to do this well today, in order to let the public know what's likely to happen, we would recommend these changes where there are multiple overlays. That's one example of where we're at. Another example which did improve at the last time we had this was bringing visuals to play. People are now wedded to the image, to the picture. And we did make some changes. Jana, how long ago was it when we brought?
2005, I
2000,
believe.
well, that's 20 years. Have I got that right?
No, yeah.
20 years ago
Close.
since we added these very simple graphics.
We had none at that time.
Correct.
Literally none.
So now we've got some of these drawings that, funnily enough, they actually sort of evolve as well. And we've evolved them. Lot coverage, for example, is another example. So these need to be tidied up, cleaned up, and brought up to speed, brought more realistic. And I think that's also what I'll be looking for from consultants. My second and last point is a little bit of a hobby horse, but I think it's an important hobby horse. Today I opened up my computer and there was an article from a one-time colleague from Virginia Tech, and he said, artificial intelligence, friend or foe? Professor of planning. And he was arguing the case that AI has benefits and potential pitfalls along the way. And I've already voiced my opinion at the planning board, saying we should ask our consultants to what extent are they employing artificial intelligence to this, and to what extent we're going to be seeing that part and parcel of what the job is today. It would take about half a minute to define elements of not just our zone, but the contiguous zones around over a particular item, and in 30 seconds you've got a report. That would take, in the past, 3-4 days, phone calls, looking at reports, cut and pasting, typing it in, white out, cut and paste, staple. You get my point? It changed. It's a different world. It is a different world. So I think these are things that I would like to see from our consultants, whoever they are.
You left out clipping, taping with the magic tape, and then photocopying the reassembled document, which is how I did my thesis, I believe. Member Brian Williams.
So I follow up on Robin's point in response. I think if you look at the history of the city over the past 30 to 40 years, we have approached planning and zoning on a non-comprehensive basis. How can I say this? We've piecemealed, whether it's the downtown plan or the triangle plan or the rail district. Everything has been pick a spot and deal with it. And this effort, by contrast, for the first time in decades, is comprehensive. It's the whole city. That requires a lot more attention by everyone to what we're trying to accomplish here. So we've dealt with smaller plans, in my view, in specific areas, and now we deal with the whole city in a comprehensive way. And that requires a lot more thought and a lot more care. And if you really follow up on it, to follow up Robin's point, we don't want to piecemeal this. We want to put it together in a comprehensive way and incorporate certainly the plans that have been adopted, but they're all different. And frankly, they use different terminology. And then lastly, I would say, and at least one of them, I won't identify which, I don't think the planning board ever got the second look in terms of implementation of the plan, the smaller plan. So this is a different approach. It's more comprehensive, it's going to be more timely, it's going to be more involved with a consultant. The one thing that we haven't said is the consultant, hopefully we pick, will have a lot of experience in dealing with this, and that will be important, that we understand not only what is good for Birmingham, but what are recent trends, what are pitfalls, what are strengths. So that's what we're going to be looking for.
Mr. Scher, did you have anything to add to Mr. Commissioner Host's question?
I think my colleagues have talked about, I'll call it, fixing what's there. Avoiding inconsistencies, making sure that it's modern, making sure it's adept, but But I think the one other thing I would say is I'm hopeful that the consultant will help make it adaptable. And what I mean there, I'll give you just an example. The 2040 plan has lots and lots of stuff in it. Some of them are land planning things, some of them are not. With respect to the land planning goals, which, if any of those, require some modifications, some new language, some new concepts in the zoning ordinance? And how can we best adopt a revised zoning ordinance that enables those things that are not explicitly there now or not incentivized there now in the best way to become more achievable?
All right, Chairman Klein, did you have anything?
I agree with everything my colleagues have said, and Commissioner Host, I guess I'd just add that for me, one of the main goals is really clarity and simplification. Zoning and zoning ordinances are difficult to begin with. Just inherently, you're talking about an ordinance trying to govern the use of private property. And how do you do that in the appropriate places? What do you do, right? But as my colleagues have said, when we do this patchwork of plans, which is pretty normal, by the way, so I don't want you to think that Birmingham's out of the norm with that. This patchwork of different area plans and overlays and the like, it can get complex quickly. The average business owner or tenant in downtown Birmingham, with due respect to them, doesn't know how to do that. And they'll come before us and we'll see plans that are nowhere near appropriate for what we're trying to be able to review. And in part it's because they're confused. They go to this section, they pop to that section, oh, I didn't know I need to go to this section, despite all the great help that staff tries to give them. Now, on the other hand, we have to thread a needle because we can make it simple, we can make it very clear, but we have to realize that there are people in this world with day jobs like I used to have, with Mr. Emerine, to a degree Mr. Scher, as a real estate attorney, whose job it is to eviscerate zoning ordinances, for lack of a better term, in order to get their client what they want. So we have to be clear enough that we get the intended consequences. And that's the needle we're going to have to thread. But to me, the 2040 plan is not a plan that I would look at and say is hugely aspirational or transformative. And I don't mean that negatively per se. Most of the 2040 plan is geared toward maintaining and improving what we have, not reinventing the wheel. It's not a rebellious plan by any stretch. So I think 80 or some percent of the zoning ordinance we're talking about is administrative. It's cleanup. It's fixing things. It's making sure we're saying things the same way to make it clear and concise for people. There's really only 10 or 15% of this that's in any way going to be really heavy lifting and really conceptual that we have to, roll up our sleeves and figure out. The rest is just making sure we put something out there that people can use and that reflects the policies that the commission wants.
Thank you. So, commission, I'm going to call on you, Commissioner Emerine, since you have sat on both boards and now you have both hats. So I'm sure you could answer it from a planning board member, but as a commissioner, do you have any thoughts on what's important for this process?
I had two comments before I even walked in this room tonight, and one of them has been mentioned, I think, 6 separate times by different people in this room tonight. I wrote down the words ease of use. Some people said the word clarity. Some people said easy for the public to understand, simplification, bring in visuals. It's all the same thing. I spend all day, every day, knee-deep in every zoning ordinance in every community around here. It's what I do professionally. The Birmingham one's actually better than most, as it is right now. That doesn't mean it can't get better. I get through it easily because I do it all day, every day. But the general business owner or whatever does not. It's hard to get through if you're not in zoning ordinances every day. So I wrote down that priority number 1 should be ease of use. However the planning board and the city commission gets to that objective, that should be the first thing. So people can understand it. If we can do that, it'll save lots of questions for planning staff too. I can only imagine how many phone calls and questions the staff do. So that should be priority number one. And then the second thing I wrote down, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but get through this quickly. And that's not to mean go through it hastily and do it in a few months. And what I mean by that is, in my opinion, the master plan took way too long. It took 4.5 years. This process should not take that long. I don't know what's in the RFP about it. But please, planning board and city commission, get through this swiftly, because the longer this takes, the longer the public will be confused, the longer it'll just make it messy. So it's very important to get through this with due care, but also don't let it drag on for forever. Those were my comments.
Thank you. Other commissioner comments? Commissioner Baller, Mayor Pro Tem Baller.
Just following up on the concerns about public engagement, being a former journalist, I think that I would hope that the city could cover this process, like in its social media, in its newsletters, etc., and start right away educating them about the history of our zoning ordinance, some of the obvious deficiencies, some of the language, even putting out a glossary, sort of an FAQ of what a zoning ordinance is, what it isn't, what it can do, what it can't do, so that, when it's time, when we have those meetings, when we get those letters, then hopefully the public is well informed. We have the capacity to inform them and to begin informing them right away.
Good point.
Other commissioner comments? Commissioner Long.
I agree with a lot of what has been said, most of it. It's overdue. In some instances, 20 years. I don't know if you've ever written something 20 years ago and read it like last night. It's not going to be good. I guarantee you, you're not going to be proud of it. Things change. This is a necessity. Inconsistencies are bad. I'm an attorney as well. I prey on inconsistencies for my client. We don't want that here. It makes everybody's job harder. I agree with public involvement. There's a lot of hand wringing that goes on when all of a sudden a community says we're gonna do a revision to our zoning law. People are like, "What's up? What do you got? What do you got up your sleeve?" That's not what we're doing here. This is a 20+ year ordinance that needs some attention, and we're using a vendor who has expertise in this area. We are not reinventing the wheel here, folks. There are other communities that have, every community has these. And Commissioner Emrine said, we're better than most, but we want to be the best. And in order to get the best, we have to go through this process, and it should have been done before now. But we're doing it. And I want to emphasize the public involvement. I want to emphasize that when it gets done and you have the overlays and those are clarified, lots of maps, lots of examples of what's staying the same and what's changing. Because if you don't educate the public, you're going to have people out there that are stating that what we are doing has some evil intent or evil planning or what have you. And let's just all work together to avoid that, because that's not what we're doing.
Commissioner Haig.
Lots of good things being said. So, Leah, I assume you put this together.
Yes.
I really like the bulleting, by the way. This was very, the way you put it together, I liked it a lot. It was concise and got to the point very well. So please do that again. Then kind of listen to everybody's comments around the room. I actually really like what Janelle said about make the first communication really simple, because I don't know that we always do. Good call. Robin, it was kind of interesting. You said talk about consultants giving perspective. I wrote down benchmarking. Exactly the same concept you're talking about there. I love this. It's just interesting. Brian talked about communication repeated and in depth, and then it was mentioned aligning boards. So it would actually be a really good opportunity to get various different boards, not just our singular planning and city commission. I think if there's a little bit more cross-pollination between a couple of key boards with this process, that would actually be very helpful, partly for the communication side as well. It just struck me. The AI crediting, we actually have to declare anything that touches AI at work. We have to put it down. So I would say we actually require that of the consultant, because yes, you're right, it's fast. It doesn't mean it's right or accurate. It makes up a lot of stuff. So we just have to be careful. I'm fully with you. Streamlining was a word that I put down, but I think the way Jason summed it up and said ease of use is actually a better description. But yeah, streamlining what we have, because I've heard it as well. I don't even touch it myself, but people complain. They just don't understand. So, very good. Chairman Klein's comment about eviscerating existing ordinances. I had a very similar conversation at work today where I told some people, I'll put my gamekeeper's hat on this time, because instead of being the one that's trying to get the money, I'm going to try and stop someone from getting the money. I'd like to use you guys as the gamekeepers instead of the poachers, because I think it would be very, very beneficial for everybody to also make it fair.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, really liked it a lot. The reference into the 2040 plan, I mean, I looked up a couple of things that bullet points spoke to me, things like the neighbourhood quality piece, which is really, really important, because I looked up form-based codes. I didn't know what form-based codes meant. So I went to AI to get a nice long description of it. And that was actually, it talked about characters of neighbourhoods as well. There's one of the specifics in there. So it was interesting that you bring it up. So I looked at the 2040 plan. It does make sense. It ties in. Within that, though, question, will this address neighbourhood parking as well? Because that seems to be part of what happens in zoning. There's a lot of overlap here, and there's a lot of complaints about certain neighbourhoods and parking that I don't know if it has a tie-in or not.
Yes, Chairman Klein.
So my answer to that would be no, in where I think you're heading, because that to me is much more of a policy decision as to, you know, if you look at the 2040 plan, the different neighborhoods. And
exactly what I was looking at, yeah.
Permits in some neighborhoods, not in others. The restrictions on different streets being so different. That to me is a police department, management, city commission, and not
Okay, so you
land
don't see
planning.
any overlap? with it?
However, parking will be part of the study, the zoning ordinance from the standpoint of parking requirements for site plans. So they're gonna take a look at national standards, they're gonna look at what we require. So yes, in that sense, but not in the way that I think you were.
Okay,
Heck.
just because it was adjacent pages of those two, and I was curious, so thank you for that clarification. I think overall, I'm very much on board with the way the scope's setting up. It's logical. It aligns with existing workshops as well. So,
Thank you. So, as Commissioner Host, did you have more comments?
I would. My concern is that, like the survey we're doing, a community survey, that in this case, the planning board and the commission will be an afterthought, to the extent that I think on the planning board, we have a lot of experts who know the foibles of possibly city planning. I like that Mr. Boyle said that this is comprehensive, so I hope the list of people that we're trying to get, vendors, are not just urban planner density people, because 85% of our space is residential. Do we, Leah, have the planning board looking at the prospective vendors, and how about the commission before they're selected? This is over the 75,000, so maybe that's for our
Yes.
city manager.
So I think that, I'm not sure what you guys have talked about on the planning board level, but I presume that you will all be involved in looking at the proposals that come in and scouring through them and coming up with the best one to put forward and make a recommendation to the city commission. The city commission has the ultimate authority, and you're the only ones that can approve signing a check to pay them to hire them. So yes, you will definitely have you'll have the final say on which firm you wanna hire. Now, I understand on Mitten, like 40 different consulting firms downloaded the RFP. So let's say we're lucky and we get 20 different firms that submit proposals. They'll be going through the planning board process of narrowing down which ones they deem to be the best, and then they'll bring the top 1, 2, 3, depending on what they decide, to the commission, and the commission will get the final say.
Sounds great.
All right, Commissioner Waller.
Following up on that, do you have the process laid out? Do you intend to interview at the planning board and interview at the city commission? We've had cases, of course, where
Nick and I have talked about this. Do we have it nailed down 100%? No, I think this is a good place to have this discussion. He was looking at having some planning board members, having an internal kind of committee, some planning board members and some staff members involved in looking over them all, having all of the planning board, is what he told me. All of you were going to get your job of evaluating each of these proposals and scoring them up and seeing which ones you decide to be the top. It depends on the process, because sometimes there's a very clear winner, and there's one, and everybody says, okay, this is the one, we're gonna bring this one in. Sometimes there's 10, or there's 3. So I think in the past, what we've done is, the planning board has whittled it down to the top 2 or 3, and then sent those on to the commission. So there will probably be some interviews at the planning board level. The final interview would be at the commission.
right, I would advocate for interviews.
Chairman Pine.
And I, thank you, Ms. Ecker, that's exactly what we, I think, had intended, was for the planning board to go through with staff to determine who we feel is the appropriate to recommend to you. I think in a perfect world, that would be one firm. We would say, city commission, we recommend hiring the following. Okay? Ms. Ecker's correct, if we get 2 or 3 that are like neck and neck, and there's no discernible difference, we may have to take a different tack and see where we want to go with that. But I don't think it is our intention, well, let me put it this way, I don't think we want to burden you with having to interview 3 or 4 people and go through these proposals again after we've gone through them one time, because frankly, we're in this world a lot more than you are. So our intention would be to try and give you a recommendation that you could then act on. Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I think it's important for the commission to know that each of the planning board members is going to be involved in reviewing the proposals coming in detail. Now, most of us have differing backgrounds, so I think that's helpful, because we'll probably approach this from different perspectives. But we'll each independently look at every proposal that comes in. And then we'll get together and share our thoughts. But in the initial stages, everybody needs to understand, I'm not gonna sit down with Dan and go over every proposal with Dan. Now, eventually, he and I may talk about it, but not in the first draft, not the first run-through. And I'm not gonna talk to Robin, I'm not gonna talk to Scott, I'm gonna do it myself. And so is Janelle and everybody else. And so I think everybody should understand that's our intent, to review this in detail from our individual perspectives, and then to do it in a group setting before it ever gets.
And how that kind of works out too, is when the planning board members all do their individual evaluations, there'll be a couple that'll settle to the bottom, and a couple that'll settle to the top, and a couple that'll be in the middle. So that's when you weed out the ones that clearly are out, and then get in the group discussion on which ones to move forward.
Commissioner Emery.
Before all this discussion went on about reviewing the RFP, I just wrote down some notes, and I wanted the city commission to know, and I also want the public to know. I mentioned earlier tonight that I do this professionally. I go to city commission meetings and planning boards all over town. And the city of Birmingham is blessed to have a planning board that has the skill set that they have. You're lucky if you get one person that knows what they're talking about on a planning board. We have an entire board full of them. So we are blessed from that perspective. suggest to the commission to take their opinions on all these matters seriously. We have engineers, planners, attorneys, architects, interior designers, you name it. You're lucky if you go to another community, you have one of those things. We have all of them. And they're all different. And they behave differently. And we're lucky to have them all. So as we're reviewing not just the RFP, but going through the process after the RFP goes and after everybody's going through all the things, this planning board is well equipped to handle this. And we should be thankful for it. So thank you. That's it.
Best planning board in Michigan?
It is the best one I've ever seen.
Thank you. Commissioner Long?
I'm not concerned about getting a recommendation from the planning board because I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. And we are blessed to have the planning board that we have. But we have to remember that we have a public that, to a certain extent, might be distrustful of what we're trying to accomplish here. And for that reason, I think that the interviewing of candidates that the planning board decides to bring back and interview obviously will be done in a public manner. And then the recommendation, as much as I would like personally one recommendation, because you all do this, I don't, I think that we should consider 2 or 3 and bringing that to the commission. If we want to have another meeting, joint meeting, workshop beforehand for discussion, that's fine. But I just think that if we were doing this in a vacuum, I'd be very, very comfortable with it, but we're not. We're doing this with 21,000 spectators, and I think that every step along the way, so they don't go back to this and say, well, you chose a vendor that already was going to try to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish, which again, is not accurate or true or fair, but I just want us to be mindful of that.
Right, let's hope that we get 2 or 3 that are all supremely qualified so that we can do that.
We'd sign the contract, do all those kind of important things.
Follow all of our contract terms.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, my goals for this process are very similar to what everybody said, in the hopes that if we have a comprehensive and comprehensible and user-friendly zoning ordinance update and map, that it will simplify life for city staff, for the planning board, for the residents. Because one of the major complaints we get is how difficult and burdensome it is, and it's not just us, as Commissioner Emmerine pointed out, to try to apply to get anything done. We all get letters from residents. And, for example, we had very, very good intentions about water retention on residential properties, and now we're getting letters from residents saying, I want to replace my deck, and they're saying it's going to cost me $6,000 to have these plans drawn up and these studies done. And so I don't know, whether that's actually true or whether there's somebody who doesn't understand what our process is. And so once we get this new ordinance, I hope that it leads to other improvements in the way we can deal with the public, in the instructional materials we can provide. And so it isn't burdensome for homeowners. Yes, we still want to have oversight over that you don't pave your entire front lawn to park cars, and that you're not splashing runoff onto your neighbors, but that that somebody can want to make an improvement to their home, and that it is, hopefully a reasonable and doable process. And so, because right now it is, we hear that it is complicated and difficult and hard to navigate and hard to understand. So, I hope all those things are, outcomes of this process as we go down the road. So, I think so. We've talked all about sort of the first question. Let's ask the commission, what types of check-ins or touch points would we like? I agree with all of your community explanations and reporting and covering, but what does the commission want as far as, do we want a quarterly update? Do we want,
I think it's difficult to explain until we know what the scope of the duration will be.
Okay.
Because let's say it's, to your point, if it's a 4-year process, is quarterly too often, or is quarterly
Oh.
telling us that we're not doing it fast enough? Or if it's actually a 3-month process, we have one touch point.
Right.
We need that piece of it to determine what the frequency would be
Okay.
to really set.
I mean, and we all have the responsibility that we can watch planning board meetings, but reports to the commission serve the purpose of not just educating the commission, they also become part of a more widely disseminated public document. Commissioner Baller.
Will there be policy questions that need to be answered by the commission in the course of this?
Very likely.
Yes, possibly.
So clearly, those are gonna be points where we're gonna have to be related.
Absolutely.
Chairman Klein.
There are also going to be a couple of interim deliverables that the consultant provides. So there's gonna be kind of a cadence and a percentage completion, if you will, moving along. I might suggest that those might be interesting things for you to just, even if it's in the back of a packet, to see a letter from Nick or something
Mhm.
that, I'll leave that to the city manager to figure out, but, keep you up to date on the progress that we've been making. You certainly would be able to see those.
Commissioner Emmerine.
In the scope of work, there in bullet point number 2 and 3, it says engage with elected officials, elected bodies in number 3, so I think that there should be some touch points there. It's already written in the scope of work. Obviously, there's gotta be a touch point at the end of the whole process, and then somewhere between, maybe after item 5, 4 is drafting the zoning ordinance, and 5 is zoning map revisions. Maybe 4 and 5 are completed, maybe that would be another good touch point, just some potential suggestions there. Again, I don't know how long the process is, or if these things overlap at all, but the
Mhm.
scope of work is sequential in the process. Those are some good touch points.
Yeah, sorry, I meant to say that when I called them steps. It's certainly sequential, but there will also be overlap
Mhm.
in.
Commissioner Baller.
Not about touch points, but we've talked about some of the overlay other master plans which led to overlay ordinances and incorporating them. And I wonder about the historic preservation master plan and whether that might result in new ordinances, and to what extent that should or should not be incorporated into this. I think that there are gonna be people concerned about that, and so it's a question to ask.
Ms.
I
Ricker.
would say that there may be ordinance changes that would be needed. They wouldn't necessarily be in the zoning ordinance. They'd be elsewhere in our city code, because anything to do with historic properties and historic homes and businesses, et cetera, there's a whole different state law procedure that they follow. So they don't go, for instance, if you want to get a waiver from the zoning ordinance, you go to the BZA and apply for a variance. In a historic home, if you don't want to follow the historic design guidelines, then you go apply to the state. So it's just a little bit of a different process. I don't think it would be in the zoning ordinance per se. But in a good example, we talked about overlays, thinking when the Triangle District project or plan was done in 2007, there was an overlay put in place for the Triangle District. And then when the 2040 plan came out, there was a whole new recommendation for Haynes Square, say, for example, which kind of connected the downtown and the Triangle District together, which was different from the Triangle Plan in '07. So kind of knitting those two together and figuring out how we want to proceed forward. It's more kind of that kind of thing, where things have come up a little differently as we've moved through the process.
Commissioner Long.
I like the touch points that Commissioner Emmerine outlaid. Those made a lot of sense to me. I think that we should consider those with further refining.
Commissioner Host.
Hey, I'm going to suggest that we review this quarterly. And it's very comforting to know that the planning board is behind this.
All right. Any other comments? Commissioner Haig.
You said they kind of overlap, but yes, but no. I mean, I look at these as it's like stage gates in a project. Literally, it's a stage gate review at the end of each one of them. And yeah, there may be overlap, but they've got logical starts and finishes to them. So I like the quarterly if it makes sense. If it would then be 4.5 months between one to another because there's a logical stage gate, I'm okay with that. Let it flow a little bit better, but have a minimum spacing and a maximum space. We've already talked about it every 2 weeks. Yes, I think the report of Chairman Klein's point is actually extremely helpful, but we all read them. It's then out in the public as a summary, which is very helpful. But I don't know if we need that fixed cadence because it's a project. Phases of projects are all different.
All right, Commissioner,
I-
Mr. Williams.
I think the one thing that has been mentioned by several people, I think this forum is a good opportunity going forward to touch base as we get through the implementation stage. I mean, frankly, there isn't a more important project involving city commission and planning board joint input than the revision to the ordinance zoning code. So we should use the opportunity when we do get together to update and share thoughts going forward. And I think because it's a public setting, that will partially alleviate some of Anthony's concerns about that we're collaborating and that we're communicating in a very open forum. So that's what I would encourage. This is kind of preliminary because we don't really know what we're dealing with yet until the proposals come in tomorrow.
Any other comments from planning board members or commission members? Any public comment or questions in the room? Online? You can use the raise your hand function if you had a question or a comment. All right, I see none. Well, it sounds like this was very productive and very helpful, and if there are no more remarks, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.